Welcome back to From the Shed End. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new as always, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're on the road to 2,000 subscribers. We're trying to get here as quick as possible, but it's been a turbulent day. It's been a turbulent day. If you was here earlier on our socials, you'll know that we've recorded the podcast, so make sure you hit the Linktree link and you'll hear mine and Theo. He's returned from Brazil. You'll hear all of that on the podcast. Make sure you go over to Spotify and listen to that now. Before the match tomorrow, we're going to talk about Everton shortly, but we have to talk about Maresca because Maresca, you have to stop tinkering with this squad. You have to stop tinkering with it. Tinkering's fine, actually, because Claudio Ranieri used to tinker with our squad all the time, and it wasn't a problem. But this is tinkering on steroids. This is tinkering too much. Too much tinkering is messing up the cohesion of the squad. And I've been saying it for so long that we need a consistent back line. We need a consistent 2 in midfield. We need a consistent 3 in the attack. We need to swap and change that attacking role to number 9. We know that. But apart from that, everything else should be consistent. We should have a spine in this team, and we don't have one. We can't let this game go 5 games without a win. We can't. We said on the podcast earlier, 1994, Glenn Hoddle was the manager last time Everton beat us at Stamford Bridge. We can't let that change. But Maresca has to trust some of these players, and he has to trust that they can play 3 games a week. Because if he doesn't, you're never going to get no consistency. You're never going to get these players gelling and understanding how they want to play with each other and understanding how that link-up play is going to work. That's never going to happen. We will always be in a situation that we're in where we're constantly trying to understand who's best in what role, who needs to play where, who can do what. We should already have that nailed down. We should know that Reece James should be a starter in pretty much most of our games now. We know that Cucurella has to start most of our games now. Even Moises Caicedo, when he's back, we know he's going to be in the team. Enzo the same. But we seem to be struggling. We seem to be struggling with the fact that we can't get the best out of this team. And that for me is a worry. That is where the worry comes, because I think we have to make sure that the squad that we put out tomorrow against Everton is a solid squad. Because Everton, they're in form. They've won, I think, 2 out their last 5 or something like that, and they've got 2 clean sheets. I think they've won 3 out their last 5 actually, and they've got 2 clean sheets. Now David Moyes is very underrated. He's very overlooked in terms of what he can do as a manager and how he sets his team up. And of course, the return of informed Keenan Dewsbury Hall alongside Jack Grealish, James Garner, Njai, Alcaraz. Barry got his first goal at the weekend just gone. So look, I think it goes without saying that Chelsea need to step up, because against Leeds, poor. Bournemouth, poor. Atalanta, poor. But I put a lot of that down to the manager, because the manager is setting up this team. We ended the game at Atalanta with 2 fullbacks in midfield. 2 fullbacks in midfield. And Andre Santos is sat on the bench waiting to come on. We can't afford to go into this game tomorrow with any silly mistakes at the back, because again, I said it on the podcast early this afternoon, physicality is Everton's speciality. They love to be physical, get under your skin. James Tarkowski, O'Brien, Michael Keane. We know that Jack Grealish is going to be a threat down that left-hand side. We know this. So my question to Chelsea and Maresca is, stop the tinkering. I understand you've got to swap players in and out, and there has to be times when certain players injured, suspensions, or they need a rest because we're playing Cardiff or we're playing Charlton, and of course you rest certain players. But the core spine of your football club, your football team can never change. It can't change. It has to be a consistent. That's where you build up your cohesion. That's how you win Champions Leagues and Premier Leagues. I actually think, and I don't want to, I'm sat here in my living room. Enzo Maresca's Chelsea manager. I'm sure he's got a lot more credentials and understanding of the game than I have. But as a fan, I'm watching Chelsea and I'm thinking, you're tinkering too much. You know, you've got 3 right backs on the bench and we're playing Chalobah as right back. That all has to stop. You have to put your trust in either James, Gusto, or Ashiempong to play as a right back. No more Caicedo at right back. We don't need that. That's why we've got the squad that we've got in terms of the depth. Now, I'm not saying it's quality in depth, but we've got depth. We shouldn't be shoehorning Chalobah and all these other players into roles that doesn't necessarily fit for them. And I honestly think that this has to stop. This has to stop because we seem to be setting our team up very, very generic. Now, against PSG, against Barcelona, you can get away with playing with the energy that we did and, you know, pushing up with the high line. We were matching Barcelona's high line. We were matching PSG's high line in the Club World Cup final. But some teams you can't set up like that because you have to think differently. Tomorrow could be one of those games where Everton snatch and grab. They might actually sit back. They might actually be very composed when they haven't got the ball, all men behind the ball. And as soon as they've got the ball, they counter and they press us. And that is what I think they will do tomorrow. But against Cardiff on Tuesday, you can't set your team up how you did against Barcelona. Maresca has to understand that there's going to be times where you have to change your philosophy, your style of play, what you're trying to do with the team. Ball over the top. Maybe you actually do drop Cole Palmer a bit deeper to the 2 in the midfield. You have to change something. Maybe you do go with a false 9. But setting up every single game with the 4-2-3-1, I said it on the podcast earlier, it isn't actually that difficult to understand how we're going to set up tomorrow because we've done it in the last 3 games and the 3 games before that. Now, he does subtly make subtle changes every now and again, like when we played Arsenal and we went down to 10 men, but it isn't enough. Sometimes you need that from the start. Sometimes you need to know that you're not going to be playing the way that you want to play in every single game the same way. Sometimes you're going to come up against a low block. How are you going to break that down? Because sometimes we look isolated. Bournemouth, we looked isolated. We looked like we were never going to score. We could still be playing today and still not scoring that game. And that's my worry going into this game, that Maresca is swapping and changing. He's overthinking things. How do you end the game at Atalanta with 2 fullbacks and you've got Andre Santos on the bench? Now, I understand you've got to change things, but when you've been under Pep Guardiola, and to give him his credit, this is only his 3rd real season as a manager. Of course, he was at Leicester before, but Maresca, you've got to change things. You've got to change something because if we lose tomorrow and results don't go our way, don't go in our favour, we could end up 12th tomorrow. That's just the reality that we're in now. A couple of weeks ago, we were talking about being 3 points off Arsenal, 2 points off Arsenal. We're now talking about, are we actually going to cave in and throw away a top 4? That's how tight it is between 3rd, between Crystal Palace and 12th Newcastle, as I'm recording this. Things have to change for Maresca. And the pressure's not on Maresca yet, but it will be very quickly. We will be very quickly. If you go out that game tomorrow without any points, you come back off the pitch and we got no points, and then you go into that game on Tuesday against Cardiff in the Cup and you get knocked out the Cup, the pressure is going to be on Enzo Maresca, not those players, but it should be on the players as well because they've got to do better. Some of these players, we can't give them excuses anymore. We can't give them excuses anymore. You might be able to give a little pass to Garnacho, Gittins, Estevao. But Cole Palmer, if you're in the team tomorrow, you need to be firing. You need to be back to what you was doing before you got injured. Or from us. Now, there's no Liam Delap tomorrow. He's out 4 to 6 weeks. And we spoke about this on the podcast earlier. There was bits of the podcast we had to edit out due to technical difficulties with the software that we were using. But we were basically saying that Liam Delap has to improve because you've been injured. You got injured, I think, in the West Ham game. You got suspended against Wolves. You came back. You was in a tussle with Senesi last week, and now you're out for 4 to 6 weeks. Now, that leaves us very short on the ground in terms of our lineup that we can go for tomorrow. But Liam Delap, this was your opportunity to get into the World Cup. fold, to get into the conversation with Tuchel. Because realistically, Harry Kane is the only nailed down striker that we have going into that World Cup in a couple of months' time in America. Ollie Watkins is not firing. Ivan Toney, I think, is probably at that conversation now. So Liam Delap, this is your opportunity to get into that conversation, to go on the plane, to go to America and play for the World Cup. But you're out for 4 to 6 weeks. And João Pedro is not good enough either. So now you're talking about Mark Guiu. Does Mark Guiu get an opportunity tomorrow to show us what he can do? Because Maresca has to get this right tomorrow. We cannot let this. I think this is our longest running record that we've got in the Premier League. 1994, Glenn Hoddle was the manager. We can't afford to let this drop tomorrow. We can't. Newcastle, big game after that. I think it's Villa after that. We can't. Maresca has to think outside the box. And he has to start thinking, am I playing Barcelona, where I can get away with the high line and the counter pressing and all the rest of it? Or am I playing a team that is going to sit back and allow us to have the ball, but then we've got to be able to unlock them? And that's the problem. Maresca hasn't got that in his caliber at the moment. He hasn't got it in his locker. But he's got to get it in his locker, because you're the manager. And when results don't go the way that we need them to go, the first point of call that we all look at as fans, pundits, and the media is the manager. So something has to change at this football club. Now, Everton tomorrow, they're in form. Everton are in absolute good form. Absolute good form. We can't afford for that to continue. We can't afford to go into this game no wins in 5. No wins in 5. Grealish is going to be is an absolute. We know what he can do on his day, but Grealish is not the problem for Everton at the moment. Keenan Dewsbury-Hall is the orchestrator in their midfield, and tomorrow he returns back to Chelsea, and I think he's going to put on a display. Maresca knows him very well. Obviously, won the Club World Cup with us, but I think he's going to want to try and prove a point tomorrow, and I think he's going to be the danger man. Him and Jai. It's going to be a problem. It's going to be an absolute problem tomorrow for us. So, and look, Barry, that first goal he got last week, that could spur him on to want to try and get more goals. So you have to ask yourself the question, what lineup should Chelsea go with tomorrow? So I'm going to tell you the lineup that I would go with and why I've gone for it. Now, I've gone with Robert Sanchez in goal, because I think Robert Sanchez, for me, deserves a lot more credit. I say a lot more now than I didn't last season, but he deserves a lot more credit. He's playing for me, the best moments in his Chelsea career, pulling off some brilliant saves. Even the Bournemouth game, keeping it down. The Atalanta game could have been a lot worse. So for me, Robert Sanchez has to be in goal for this game. I've also gone with Reece James. Now, Reece James, for me, has to play at right back, because if he doesn't, and I've just mentioned about Grealish, I think Malo Gusto would struggle. I think Malo Gusto struggles with him at right back. So I've gone with Reece James. I've gone with Fofana, who's, according to Maresca, fit to play. Fofana. And I've gone with Trevor Chalobah. I think they're the most consistent two. We cannot see Tosin tomorrow. We can't. He can't play. Cucurella is left back for me. I've gone with Cucurella as left back. I've gone with the two in midfield of Enzo Fernandez, who I think will have to be in there. Now, there is no Moises Caicedo. Now, I've gone with Andre Santos in that midfield, because I think he deserves an opportunity. I think, as I've just said, you want to play the players in the right positions and make sure that when you're playing them, you're getting the best out of them. So Andre Santos, off the back of that season he had last season in Liga, has to start getting game time. For me, he has to be in the midfield. Now, there is a second option, which I'll talk about shortly afterwards, but I've gone with him in the midfield with Enzo Fernandez. I've gone for a three of Estevao, Cole Palmer, and Pedro Neto on the left-hand side. And I've gone with Mark Guiu up front. Now, that would be my That would be the lineup I would want to see. But there is an argument to say, do you put Cole Palmer in that three with Andre Santos? And do you actually just play with Estevao on the right, Neto on the left, and Guiu, and play as a 4-3-3? Because I think we need to change something. Do we need an extra body in midfield? And we know that Cole Palmer loves to drop into those spaces, in between the lines, in that midfield. He can create, he can pass balls, his passing range is brilliant. He can create something out of nothing. He loves to drive forward with the ball. So I'm asking the question, does Cole Palmer need to drop into that three? Make it a 4-3-3, adapt, make it change, make it difficult for James Garner and Keenan Dewsbury-Hall in that midfield. But that's the predicted lineup I've gone with. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I do think this is going to be a really difficult game. I think it's going to be a difficult game. But I went earlier on the podcast 2-1 to Everton. That was earlier on. I've sat down, I've had a little time to... I'm going to go 1-0 Chelsea. I'm confident we can get the win if we put the lineup out that I think we should go with. If we're shoehorning players in, I might have to stick with the 2-1 that I went with earlier. But let me know what your thoughts are. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll be back after the game tomorrow for a match review of the game. Hopefully 3 points in the bag to save Maresca's blushes. Could be 5 matches without a win. Let's hope not. Join us back tomorrow for more. Enjoy your weekend.